Welcome to the Liberty Perspective. I'm Joe Marshall. Today I got a show put together for you on Dr. David Martin. I'm going to get right into it because I got a lot to go over with you, and I got a lot for you to take into consideration. I know the guy is really popular. I know a lot of people out there that are, patriots and, conservatives or whatever. That they love this guy. And a lot of people everywhere love this guy. And, he's part of the medical freedom movement. A lot of people everywhere. A lot of people like the medical freedom movement at large. But, as I've come to find out, this whole medical freedom movement at large is nothing really but a bunch of progressives undermining our founding principles and subverting our founding principles with in the name of liberty, with revolutionary progressive fundamentals that have actually targeted our republic and our liberty for destruction, and our founding principles for destruction. And they're incrementally working at chiseling away at the history, not just what those principles are today or what they were at our founding, but the principles and ideologies upon which they're based. The people, the words John Locke, Adam Smith, that people that our founders drew inspiration from in deciphering what our founding principles actually are. So they're going back in time. They're going back to that time and to the writings of those people that inspired our founders, and they're twisting them. They're misconstruing them. They're sabotaging them. And they're putting a lens from the perspective of the revolution against them, making people understand all these things in our founding principles themselves, our founders themselves, and therefore our liberty through the eyes of the revolution that has targeted them all for destruction. This is where we're at. And I've got some information for you to consider, because in that light, I don't see Dr. David Martin being anything different than any of the rest of the medical freedom movement doctors in doing just that. And I've got some information for you to take into consideration. If you want. You don't have to. But anyways, this is what we're doing here. I can see that. Okay. We got the title. Dr. David Martin, Patriot or Motivational Propagandist. I mean, this guy's a linguist. He says he's a linguist, whatever that means, right? Whatever that means. But how's it become so popular for Americans to shit on America? How's it become so popular for Americans to be listening to other Americans shit on America? I mean, this guy has crowds. I mean, everywhere he goes all over the world. Do people realize what he's saying? Do they care what he's actually saying? I mean, it's mesmerizing. But what is he actually saying? I went down through here a couple things. This video, he did this video with Sasha Stone. Okay. And you know who Sasha Stone is. I did a couple videos on him. We'll be getting into that in a minute. I've already done a couple on him. You should watch him. Because the guy, the Christed collectivism, the angelic human or some shit, he's talking about, okay? At 43:14 in that video with Sasha Stone, Martin talks about how the Pope was dying of classic spike-inspired bioweapons effect. So in that, I mean, you just let that slip by. He's talking about the Pope and how he's dying. Well, it's a classic spike-induced, it's the classic spike-inspired bioweapon effect, he called it. So in that, he's pushing the narrative. Just like the rest of the medical freedom movement, of the virus is real. Because if the spike is real, then the virus is real. The spike can't be real if the virus ain't real. He's pushing the whole gain of function narrative. Gain of function that means they must have a virus. The virus is real if you're going to have a gain of function. You can't have gain of function on a virus that ain't real. Okay? And it doesn't push back against the existence of a SARS-CoV-2 novel virus or from the NRA that they took from the mud puddle, and they synthesized synthetic DNA out of that, and then said that that's what the PCR tests were going to be looking for. What happened to the sequence in the mud puddle? Did that travel around the world, or is it the genetic DNA, synthetic DNA that they said was I don't know. But there's no academic critique of the underlying principle, underlying theory, underlying narrative that allows for the whole pandemic to exist, future pandemics to exist, the need for vaccines to exist, the need for PCR tests to decipher it, the bird flu, the swine flu, and the cullings of all of our farm animals, and our food supply to exist, the zootonic jump shit to exist. There's no academic pushback on it except for Dr. Jonathan Cooey at Giga Ohm Biological, Mark Kulak at Housatonic. Literally the only two pushing back. Outside the no virus altogether, people. Not saying viruses don't exist. Not saying viruses aren't a thing. But the way they're putting these pandemic scares together, nobody's giving. It's the critique of that isn't coming from Dr. David Martin or anybody else in the medical freedom movement that I can see other than Dr. Jonathan Cooey. The biology isn't there to support any of it. And he's the only one that I've seen call it out. As per the biology. And at 4849, he says that the biggest active emergency use authorization in 2018 was for vaccines for COVID addiction, which I found kind of, I hadn't heard of that. I know Mark Kulak at Housatonic, he's been talking about this whole opioid crisis and whole opioid pandemic and how it's been actually our whole life expectancy decreased because of opioid deaths and overdoses alone, right? So I found it kind of interesting to look into this a little bit, and I'm not going to dig in too far, but yeah, it's a thing. These this whole overdose or addiction, opioid addiction vaccine, they're calling them. I said, wow, is this another freaking mRNA push for some shit for mRNA? But they got this article here. If anybody wants to dig into this anymore, the new tool to fight cancer, infections, addiction. It just came out. In 2024. They got this thing called the hell. It's a Q beta delivery platform. Yeah. What they say, basically, they say the Q beta is a soccer ball shaped bacteriophage. So it's not mRNA, supposedly. It's a bacteriophage based vaccine. That the secret sauce in that, as they say, stimulates the body's helper T cells. I don't know. There's a little bit of something if somebody wants to dive into that and see what that's about. But yeah, it's a thing. Those addiction vaccines are a thing. Martin says that if you don't know that in Texas right now, women in the military are being subject to breast cancer prophylactic vaccination for breast cancer. If you don't know that, you're not woke and you're not ready to drive, he said. If you don't know that, you're not woke and you're not ready to drive. Not really sure where he's going with this, other than to imply nobody but him and maybe a small handful of other academic elites aren't qualified to run America if we aren't aware that the Army is running these vaccine experiments, right, on the women in the Army. But here, I dug into that a little bit too. I said, why is he bringing this shit up? I wonder if there's any meat to that. You know what I mean? Is it the Army's new mission into breast cancer? Is this article here? That's not coming in. That link isn't working for some reason. Not to mention the AIDS vaccine research goes back to 1991. The title of it is the Army's new mission into breast cancer from 1991. The research goes back to 1991 when women's health groups themselves as, quote, victors in setting the research agenda became directly involved in the negotiations between the NIH and the Army over how to spend money. They just got some new funding, man. They were all real excited. So advocacy groups, women's health groups, and the Army were trying to figure out how they were going to spend that money together. It wasn't just the Army, deviantly or maniacally experimenting on women in the Army. You know what I mean? Okay, and then I got another one. This Army-led breast cancer vaccine study. This was 2006. Like, he's talking like Martin is saying, oh, geez, well, if we don't worry about this stuff going on, man, you don't know about this stuff going on like it was something new. This is an article from 2006, right? Has been a thing since at least 2000, results of which from their 6-year study released in December of 2006 were said to, quote, suggest a 50% reduction in the disease reoccurrence for vaccinated women. Which, on a side note, in 2024, a military study on the incidence of breast cancer among members of armed forces serving active duty found no statistically significant risk factors associated with military service. That's that article there, paper, memorandum, whatever it is that came down. In 2012, the Army confirmed that for more than 15 years, it has been conducting research on breast cancer vaccines, and that acceptance rate for clinical trials in the Army is nearly 50%, while in civilian world, it's in the single digits. So people in the Army, women in the Army, were more apt to sign up for these trials, these clinical trials. Maybe they're more, altruistic, or they're just people that are wanting to do things for their country. Do it for your country kind of thing. I don't know. But in 2024 too, okay, this is in 2024 too. Up here they had a 2024 paper here that found no statistically significant risk for factors associated with military service. Down here they got a 2024 article according to the National Breast Cancer Foundation. That article there. Okay. That women in the military are up to 40% more likely to develop breast cancer than in their civilian counterparts. So it's 2024, same year, you had one study come out from the government there, right? It was issued by Undersecretary of Defense, and the other one issued by National Breast Cancer Foundation. Said they were 40%. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. Not going to do either way. You want to dig into that? That's something that you want to dig into. Go ahead and do it. There's a place to start. But what I'm saying is that it's nothing new. Martin's calling out these things, this experiments, these trials that are being conducted by the Army on women with breast cancer. Is something new that you don't know about this? Then you're not qualified. You're not woke, and you're not ready to drive. And I got this last thing on here. An Advocacy and Action DoD Breast Cancer Research Program from 2021. From 2021. Okay, this is the Cancer History Project. Advocacy and Action, the DoD Breast Cancer Research Program. In this article here, it says the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program. Okay, Breast Cancer Research Program is an example of how National Breast Cancer Coalition advocates push boundaries to pursue critical research funding and changes to the system of research that incorporate advocates and support meaningful results that incorporates advocates. So this is a women's health groups, National Breast Cancer Coalition advocates pushing boundaries to pursue critical research funding and changes to the system of research that incorporates advocates. So it's advocates that are working with the Army or working with the Department of Defense in this, right? It's not like, if you listen to what Dave Martin says in the context of what he's saying in that video, it's like, well, if you're not aware of this stuff, man, this stuff's out there. And do you know what the military's doing to our women? I don't know. Just for your consideration, it's nothing new. And women's health groups and advocates, breast cancer advocates, are actually working with the Army to do these things, with the DOD to do these things. So, I don't know. And my whole thing on that is he leveraging the anti-government sentiment that exponentially grew in COVID? Is he leveraging that for increased mistrust of our military, increased mistrust of our government? I mean, that's what revolutions do. I mean, they get the people of the society targeted for destruction to start mistrusting each other, start mistrusting its government, start mistrusting the pillars of that society, government institutions, the military of that society. That's how it works. And Dr. David Martin is feeding that narrative. He's feeding that mistrust with that. I don't see what else it could be. Just for your consideration. He appears to be feeding the mistrust, I don't know. But anyways, at 58, Dr. Martin references Sasha Stone's New Earth program, New Earth Project. Boy, I'm telling you right now, if you haven't seen them 2 shows I did in Sasha Stone, you might want to, because this guy's Christed collectivism and all the different people that are involved from the medical freedom movement and the big guns, Del Bigtree, Peter McCullough, RFK Jr., G. Edward Griffin, Steve Kirsch, Naomi Wolf, and a bunch of Judy Mikovich, and a bunch of other people are all involved in there too. QAnoners and everything else involved in that, right? But they're going for this Christed collectivism, and they got sovereign citizen people mixed in there with that, and it's new age stuff. But all the medical freedom movement, and this guy's a postmodern guy. He's not just anti-American government, he's anti-governments of the world guy. Postmodern, but he's also the same guy who worked with Jeffrey Sachs to establish what they referred to back then as the United Nations Millennial Development Goals, which turned into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, out of which Humanitad came out, which David Martin is also involved with. Anyways, there's that to take into consideration. Dr. Martin, at 153, Dr. Martin again pushes the virus bioweapons via gain of function narrative. At 130.25, Dr. Martin expresses his and Sasha Stone's, quote, deep similarity at the essence level, which, to me, if you know anything about Sasha Stone, and I've looked into him a little bit, that in itself is it isn't encouraging if you're hoping to see Dr. David Martin as a champion of our founding principles or individual liberty or free enterprise, free market capitalism. So if you haven't seen the shows that I did on revolutionary Christed, postmodern collectivism of New Age medical freedom guru Sasha Stone, and any of the controlled demolition of America being led by him in the name of liberty and individual sovereignty, no less, means anything to you, you might want to check those out. And this is one here. This is one of the videos. And that right there is Sasha Stone, if you don't know. And that right there is Jeffrey Sachs. Okay. They're in their picture together. Oh, yeah. And this is the other one that I did. Boy, that conversation between them two. He talks about being, how he flies to the moon and stops on the dark side of Mercury or something. It flew to the dark side of the moon and then stopped by Mercury on the way back or something. I don't know. But anyways, interesting stuff. You should check that out. And this is the guy that everybody's affiliated with in the medical freedom movement. I shit you not. Check it out. 132. Dr. Martin says, the illusion of abortion wouldn't exist if the seasonal harmonics of our humanity were taught. If the seasonal harmonics of our humanity were taught, the illusion of abortion wouldn't exist. If we stopped fucking at will, can't just fuck at will, you know, and started, quote, teaching sexuality and procreative sexuality as a way that reinstills the notion that it is a sacred invocation of inviting life onto this planet and that it's not an accident. You know, that's weird, but there isn't anything particularly incriminating in that. Until you apply this. He says, we decided to abandon that in 1776. That's what we abandoned in 1776? Because he says, in Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, we decided to say that humans were, Adam Smith, in his Wealth of Nations, he decided to say that humans were labor. And he says, you hear what I said? Humans were labor. Guess what? David Martin goes on. This is a quote. Guess what? You don't give a shit guess what you don't give a shit about when humans are labor? You don't give a shit about the sanctity of the human life you're bringing in because they are just a cog in the machine. You're bringing in just another cog into the capitalist machine, right, man? I mean, because they're just a cog in the machine, raw materials for the inventory of the industrial supply chain. Guess what you don't give a shit about when humans are labor? You don't give a shit about the sanctity of human life you're bringing in because they are just a cog in the machine. Raw materials for the inventory of the industrial supply chain. This is a hostile, if you didn't recognize it, is a hostile, anti-capitalist, anti-property interpretation of Adam Smith straight out of Marxist progressive collectivist doctrine. Marxist/progressive collectivist doctrine, because not just Marxism, but collectivist doctrine in general. To put it mildly, including, for instance, Margaret Sanger's Malthusian and eugenics-inspired unwanted child. It's all consistent with what he just said there. From her 1920 book, Women in the New Race. This is just a quote out of that to give you an idea. Labor seems instinctively to have recognized the fact that its servitude, labor is being exploited, its servitude springs from numbers. The base principle of craft unionship is limited, the limitation of number of workers in a given trade. Okay? The weakness of craft union is that it doesn't, craft unionism, the weakness of craft unionism, trying to learn how to talk here, is that it does not carry its principle far enough. It applies its policy of limitations of numbers only to the trade. In his home, the worker, whether he is a unionist or a non-unionist, goes on producing large numbers of children. They're fucking at will. I mean, they're just having kid after kid after kid after kid, right? But they're saying that he just keeps producing large numbers of children to compete with him eventually in the labor market. So he's producing his own competition, which is going to make him less valuable. Okay, that enemy of labor is the reproductive ability of the working class, which gluts. Can't just fuck it well, man. That enemy of labor is the reproductive ability of the working class which gluts the channels of progress with the helpless and the weak. The human weeds, man, you know? The imbeciles. And it stimulates the tyrants of the world in their oppression of mankind. Tyrants. Would be the capitalist tyrants, right? That's Margaret Sanger's, right out of Women in the New Race, saying nothing different than what Dr. David Martin just espoused here. That this is the direction he's saying we went in 1776. Furthermore, it's largely what Dr. David Martin is saying. It's largely just a redo of the pre-Marxian progressive era, which was in the early 1800s. Socialism, such as the transcendentalism, if you've ever heard of transcendentalists, they were around in the early 1800s. Utopian socialists, they were called. Okay, including, it's largely just a redo of this transcendentalism. Including that of John Humphrey Noyes' complex marriages and Bible communism, which happened not too far from here, really. Oneida, New York. Oneida Silverware was one of their businesses. That's I think Oneida Silverware still might be around. I don't know, but there was a pretty, everybody had an Oneida Silverware in their kitchen, for a while. But yeah, they had complex marriages where everybody in the community was married to each other, basically, so anybody could be with anybody's wife, and everybody could fuck anybody. You know what I mean? So this was what was known as complex marriage. So this whole thing that they got on Netflix now or whatever, Hulu, with these complex marriages, and it's nothing new. It all comes out of the same collectivism. That's in the morals of collectivism. But his complex marriage, Bible communism. Charles Fourier was another one. He had what they referred to his utopia as phalanxis, which is basically back in the day. He had the first smart cities, first smart buildings, communities. And see, basically. Phalanxis is what they're called. Let me see. Removing obstacles was paramount, and the main obstacle in Fourier's eyes were that what we today call compulsory monogamy, wage slavery, alienated labor, the individualized, alienated, atomized labor, which ties into Matthias Desmet's psychology of totalitarianism, finance insecurity and finance capitalism. By banishing monogamy, people would no longer be obliged to cheat, lie, and sneak. Well, Malthus actually, if you read his thing, he actually blamed overpopulation on the morality or virtue of marriage. And where you have a lot of promiscuity, the population would go down. And the corruption of morals, it would result in a corruption of morals, and it would result in a saddening or disheartening of society, which is all part of the reason why Malthusian population control, it isn't just population control. There's a lot of other aspects of Malthus when implemented. The morality, the assault on a moral society, which our founders said that our republic was for a moral people only. It was for a moral people only and wholly inadequate for any other. So once you lose your morality, your republic's gone. So this is why we had a lot of people in the Fabian socialists, and we had Havelock Ellis, and we had a lot of these, utopian socialists and stuff that were trying to assault our founding principles from early on. They saw the killing two birds with one stone. You control the population with all this promiscuity, unnatural passions, homosexuality, anything that's non-procreative, mucho masturbation, mutual masturbation, all this other kind of stuff, right? anal sex, oral sex, anything that's non-procreational. Promote that. And not only does it corrupt the moral fabric of society, it just lets people get their rocks off in a non-procreational way. It promotes that. It's just crazy. So Malthusian principles work against our founding principle republic on multiple levels. You know, it's not just population control. I go over that in my book. I think one of the chapters, but I cover all that in my book and what Malthus actually wrote. You know, he was a Baptist minister. I think a Baptist or a Protestant minister, anyways. Okay, that's John Humphrey Noyes' Complex Marriage. This is all very similar. What Martin is saying, again, is very similar with the transcendentalism of John Humphrey Noyes. His Complex Marriage and Bible Communism, Charles Fourier's Utopian Phalanxes, the mental independence of Robert Dale Owen's New Harmony. He had a society called New Harmony. In 1826, Ralph Dale Owen, I think his son, wrote a Declaration of Mental Independence. I think it was a 50-year anniversary or something, or 75-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. My math is, don't let my math get in the way. But anyways, Declaration of Mental Independence, where he identifies the Hydra, the evil Hydra of what he says, three-headed Hydra of God, marriage, religion, marriage, and property, which could be translated to God, family, and capitalism. That's the three-headed Hydra that has to be under attack and under assault by collectivism. The three-headed Hydra. Everything in every collectivist doctrine has targeted all three of them for destruction. Pretty much. I mean, there's Christian collectivism, Christian humanism, they say even, right? Walter Rauschenbusch. I did a show on Walter Rauschenbusch's Christianizing the Social Order. Back to the basics. I did a few shows on back to original documents and collectivist doctrine. One of them was Walter Rauschenbusch's Christianizing the Social Order, where he goes over how Christianity is secularized, the secularization of Christianity for society, for a collective society. Probably something similar to Teilhard's noosphere, right? Probably something similar to that. But anyways, so Martin's stuff is really no different, or just a redo of all these people's documents. You've got also the anti-capitalism of England's Ricardian socialists, okay? And thoughts on economics, you've got Smith explains source of profits and exploitation of workers. See, Karl Marx described the source of profits. Okay? It's all an attack on capitalism. It's all an attack on capitalism, which is an attack on free enterprise, which is an attack on our endowed by our Creator right to the pursuit of happiness, because there can be no pursuit of happiness. The free exchange of property owned for property desired, from which we could acquire the prosperity, the potential prosperity and profit with which to pursue an independent happiness. There's no other earthly avenue to the ability for independent pursuit of happiness than through free exchange or free enterprise. Otherwise, you just got your hand out for whatever ration the redistributive planners say that they're going to redistribute to you. Subject to change at any moment at the whim of the planners. You know. So, but you've got the Ricardian socialists, okay? And even if you want to take the time to read through it, the anarchist doctrine of Mikhail Bakunin. This is the capitalist system. You can go into that. But all the way down through is labor, look at speculation and exploitation. No doubt, also constitute a sort of labor, but altogether non-productive labor, even non-productive labor. He critiques it all. Capitalism, anti-capitalism, anti-free enterprise, anti-free market, the exploitation of the proletariat by capitalists, all that shit. It's all the same stuff. Anarchist doctrine, consistent with what Dr. Martin was saying there, right? To name just a few, in fact, the whole labor theory of value, okay, people before profits and their implied exploitation of labor accusatory against capitalist profits, as per the Adam Smith thing, doesn't only pervade almost every facet of Marxian economic analysis. Okay. It's been proudly proclaimed by Marxist academia itself to be the origins of Marxist economics. The labor theory of value, the origins of Marxist economics. So I'm not making this shit up. I'm not seeing shit when I hear, somebody, I don't care if it's Dr. David Martin or anybody that's espousing that assault, that collectivist, progressive assault on Adam Smith and saying that, he made people labor upon which they're being, exploited, and we're just having kids that are producing more kids that are just going to be cogs in the wheel of the capitalist system or the industrial supply chain, however you want to put it. That argument is the origins of Marxist economics. Essentially. The origins of Marxist economics. And that's not, I'm not making this up. I'm not saying that shit. When you go down through there and you look at these things, you look at the argument that he's making, it's the same argument throughout collectivist doctrine. He's subtle about it, but that's what it is. To the other extreme, just so you're aware, I found this when I was out there looking through this shit. The other extreme, just so that you're aware, there's a new progressive convolution just this side of the revolutionary horizon in which Adam Smith and Karl Marx are actually both collectivists fighting on the same side of for the proletariats against the capitalist exploitation of labor. I shit you not. Our founders got inspiration from Adam Smith. If he was a collectivist arguing against free enterprise, they wouldn't have gotten anything from him whatsoever. Right. But anyways, there's this article here, Adam Smith and the Yellow Vest and Movement. And so I say Adam Smith described the machinery of class struggle. So, but anyways, they all through this whole article, they're basically saying that they're pro Adam Smith. So just because you're reading an article that's pro Adam Smith doesn't mean that you're reading an article that is pro founding principles in America, pro American Republic. I just want to put this out there for your consideration so that you're aware of it. And this article here kind of, picture means 1,000 words, but more similar than you'd think. Adam Smith and Karl Marx. Here's the article. Just so that you're aware. Yeah, while Adam Smith and Karl Marx are typically viewed as polar opposites in the world of economics, their ideas might be more interconnected than you think. So, I mean, just so you're aware that it's out there, you know what I mean? At 141, in that show with Sasha Stone, Dr. Martin, in the context of Sasha Stone's Heaven on Earth, 0-point economy in a world where Sasha Stone says everything in Walmart is manufactured out of locally farmed and processed hemp, like he wants to do at his New Earth project in Tennessee, as manifested from the true economics, he says, from the true cost economics of his best friend, QAnoner, Robert David Steele. Yeah, this guy was involved in a lot of shit, this Robert David Steele. He died. They made a big deal. He died, they say, of COVID. They said he died from COVID. And he was COVID, he wouldn't get vaccinated and everything. And he was at all these reawakening tours and all this other stuff. said he was a former CIA agent or intelligence agents or something. I don't know. But when he died, the papers and everybody just jumped all over that shit. That conspiracy theorist and COVID denier dies, of COVID. Made a big deal out of it. Dr. Martin references a paper. He says published in the context of mentioning all these things in this conversation about all these things. Dr. Martin references a paper that he says he published several years ago for the Waterford Institution. I'd never heard of it. Called The True Cost of Wealth of Nations. The True Cost of Wealth of Nations. What do you think that argument's going to be? He himself says was a spin-off of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. Well, I looked that up, and the full title of that article is The Inquiry into Human Nature and the Cost of the Wealth of Nations, Addressing Global Systems Failure Through an Integral Systems Paradigm for Sustainable Development. So from the perspective of sustainable developer systems paradigm for sustainable development, he's going to inquiry into the human nature and cost of the wealth of nations. So from the perspective of the socialism of sustainable development, he's going to critique Adam Smith, like I said, in which he masterfully convolutes, in my observation, and or projects the tyranny of a centrally planned scarcity, onto free market capitalism and thereby our individual liberty, not to mention our founders, via a full-out assault on the philosophical and ideological sources upon which our founding principles were derived. Like I said, this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing on why I want to get to the bottom of this, because what he's doing is he's calling out Adam Smith. He's calling out Adam Smith as the whole principles that Adam Smith put forth as the source of our tutelage, as the source of our oppression, as the source of our enslavement to a capitalist system, and as he refers to it, the new monarchy, the new tyranny, the new monarchy of America. But he's going back into the sources, critiquing the sources as a source of our oppression today, when they're the same sources that our founders, the same ideological and philosophical well from which our founders were pulling from when deciphering our founding principles as a means of our emancipation from a world history that had been nothing but oppression. They're Dr. David Martin and the progressive collectivist revolution at large is saying that they're the oppression. Again, we have slavery, which collectivism does and always has done, is selling slavery, actual slavery, as our only emancipation, and selling our only actual liberty as slavery. It's a convolution. And if ever there was an evil on earth, it's collectivism. Because that's what it does. Compare, I got that. Compare an admitted Marxist perspective, how Adam Smith inspired Karl Marx economic update with Richard Wolff. This guy, Richard Wolff, I think it was the New York Times or somebody said he's America's most prominent Marxist. I just want you to listen to the first couple minutes of this. It's only a 5-minute video, but listen.
One of the things that makes Adam Smith famous in the world of economics, or his follower, David Ricardo, the two of them, Smith and Ricardo, basically considered the fathers of the modern science of economics, and recognized by Marx, who comes later, a generation later than them, but he recognized also the enormous achievement that they had made. And one of the things that made Adam Smith so famous was the following line in his book, The Wealth of Nations, that the value of anything is, in the end, determined by, I'm now going to use his words, the toil and trouble needed to produce it.
I'm going to go over that toil. Toil is mentioned 5 times in that Wealth of Nations. 5 times. 4 times in one paragraph. We're going to actually read that paragraph, or some of it, or show you. It doesn't say what he says it said. He's telling you his version of what Adam Smith actually said. I'm just going to show it to you. Just remember what he just said.
For Marx, and determine you of anything is in the end determined by, I'm now going to use his words, the toil and trouble needed to produce it.
Remember that.
For Marx, as one of the many people who marveled at what Smith had written, here was something spectacular. For Marx, it was the linkage of the value of the things that we see produced in the world as linked to, as dependent on, as created by labor. For Marx, it put labor at the center of what economics was all about.
Exactly what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not seeing shit. I'm not seeing things. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not making this stuff up. It's out there. It's doctrinaire stuff. Just pointing it out to you, because when I hear him talk, these are all the things that I can see it. And I'm just trying to put it out there so that you can take it into consideration. This is what I'm hearing when I hear Dr. David Martin talking about these things, when I hear anybody talking about these things. Again, my whole show, and the reason why I started the show was just to a place where, I was going to defend our founding principles. I'm going to defend our founding principles regardless of where the collectivism that has targeted for destruction, no matter who's espousing that collectivism, where it's being espoused, how it's being espoused, or when it's being espoused. Like I said, or by whom, or by what. I'm going to call it out for the progressive collectivism that it is, and thereby the threat to the liberty in our republic that it is. For your consideration. That's all I can do. So, what did Adam Smith actually say? You heard him talk about the toil and the labor and everything. So this is the toil. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's only mentioned 5 times in the whole Wealth of Nations. 4 of them is in this chapter, or in this paragraph from chapter 5. The real price of everything, what everything really costs, not what its value is, but what it costs to the man who wants to acquire it. Okay. Now, when you're producing a product or a service, let me see something here. Sorry. That freaking camera keeps tracking me. I don't know what the hell's going on. But anyways, it's what the product costs, okay? The price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. In other words, how many hours of work do you work? How many paychecks is it going to take for you to have the money to buy what you want to buy? That's what he's saying. What everything is really worth to the man who has acquired it and wants to dispose of it. Okay, what's that money you have made worth to you? What's the product of your labor worth to you? If I go out and I'm making maple syrup, and I've made maple syrup before. I used to make maple syrup. It was a bust-ass work. A lot of work. And back when I was making, now I think they're getting like $20 a quart plus. Back when I was making, I think you get $7 is what we were getting for a quart, and that was just way too much work for me. I didn't sell it. I thought money wasn't worth enough. I got more out of giving a lot of the maple syrup I made away to people. I got more. It was worth more to me to do that than it was to sell it for frickin' $7. It was frickin'. It was an insult, you know. So, but this is what he's saying. What is the money that you're making that you're going to buy things worth to you? What is the product of your labor worth to you when you go to exchange it? You know what I mean? So it's really up to you. Is the toil and trouble which it can save to himself? Okay, if I'm buying hammers and nails, I'm buying a house, I'm buying a car, it's saving me the time and labor it would take to make it myself. And so, okay. Which it can save to himself and which it can impose on another person. Of course, the people that are making that car, they have their value, their labor is value, but they're getting paid money too, right? Okay. I mean, it's just a way of looking at everything that's happening in a free exchange of property owned for property desired. You know, I don't know. What is bought with money or with goods is purchased by labor, or labor, or the fruits of your labor, right? What you own in property. That goes back to Locke. That's another reason why a lot of people are shitting on Locke, including Noam Chomsky, right? Okay, what is bought with money or with goods is purchased by labor, as much as what we acquire by the toil of our own body. That money or those goods indeed save us this toil. That's not what that guy said he said. It's not what that guy said he said. But anyways, but you can see this is the kind of shit that they do. Read original documents for yourself. We need to know what our founding principles are as per what our founding fathers said they were. What our republic is as what our founders said it was, as the idea of America and the American experiment was supposed to be, according to the people who ordained it. The documents that ordained it. You know, we need to go to original documents because history is being misconstrued by design to convolute and create chaos, which, you know, from the perspective of the revolution against the society targeted for destruction, the more chaos that's there, the more convolution that's there, the more revolutionary progress. That's all it is. You can see it from the perspective of the revolution. It's a heyday, man. It's a heyday. For the real Adam Smith, that is, not through the lens of the progressive collectivist revolution targeting our individual rights and liberty and free enterprise that they enable for destruction, read his original works. That goes for not only Adam Smith, but all of our founders specifically, but pretty much most all of history now, as it is as per Michelle Obama's prescription being changed, because remember she called for, we need to change our history, she said. Yeah. More revisionist anti-American collectivism from Dr. David Martin. This show is another thing that he did. He put out a video, American Revolution r/evolution. This was it here. I went to dig this up, and they talk about it in here in 2015. Okay, that's David Martin there, right? But anyways, the video's unavailable for that. I was like, crap. I found it on BitChute. This is the video.
Well, we all remember what happened during COVID.
I want you to listen to a few minutes of this.
Drug that had been used for decades effectively and safely was...
Scientists discovered a synthetic compound that makes you invisible to mosquitoes. And now it's available in this pocket-sized...
When we said we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal, and we say that in 1776, isn't there another voice in 1776 that's actually saying something entirely different? Isn't there in The Wealth of Nations Adam Smith's mandate that says that laborers are required to create value, and that there is a new class replacing the monarchy, replacing the ecclesiastical structures? Isn't there a new class called the industrialist, called the financier? Isn't there a new class that's coming in? And are they using this cunning tool called the corporation, which rather than holding people accountable is expressly set up to limit liability so that the human isn't responsible for his or her action? Because this anonymized other, this ephemeral construction called the corporation, is set up expressly for the purpose of enrichment of that individual who has no accountability.
Anyways, just a flat out, diatribe, polemic to capitalism. And he goes on, like, that was at 1518. Regarding, again, Dr. Martin speaks to Adam Smith's alleged mandate that labor create value for the new monarchy. He says, basically, of capitalism, we exchange one monarchy for another, that our revolution, wasn't about some ideological thing, it was about establishing corporatists and corporations as the new monarchy, escape the tyranny of the king just to replace it with the tyranny of capitalism, essentially. From what I get out of it, in my observation, for your consideration. From there, we learned that the economic violence of the American Revolution was non-inclusive. It wasn't inclusive, but or as it were, non-representative and bankrolled by private bankers or financiers. Because, there was still about 30% of the population or so, thereabouts, give or take, that were still loyalists. They didn't want to fight the revolution. So our revolution right from the get-go was not inclusive, dude. It was fought as a protectionist move by greedy. Essentially, what we get out of it, the gist of what he is saying, is it was fought as a protectionist move by greedy, raping, pillaging, violent capitalists with their guns and their gunpowder and more expedient bullets to establish an atomized individualism of free market capitalism as the new monarchy in America. You heard him mention monarchy. That's what it is. Seeking hegemonic power. Hegemonic power. It's the same kind of shit that Matthew Ert was talking about. All those people on Russian television with all that economic Marxist economist there, Richard Wolff, he was on there with Matthew Ert and all them promoting BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a bunch of other people now promoting BRICS over American hegemony in the world. Yeah, with Matthew Ert saying the same shit that Dr. David Martin is saying in this video. Okay? I suggest that you watch that video. I really do. Because, let me see. Okay. It was fought as a protectionist move by greedy, raping, pillaging, violent capitalists with their guns, powder, and more expedient bullets to establish the atomized individualism of free market capitalism as the new monarchy in America, seeking hegemonic power than by mythological hypocrisy of some distant moral high ground occupied by a humanist philosophy of a slave owner, namely Thomas Jefferson. He shits on Thomas Jefferson here, okay? Of course, he says, well, that Thomas Jefferson was out there, he's the guy. That's the philosophy behind America. But nor was the Revolutionary War won by America. It wasn't won. America didn't win the revolution. America didn't win the Revolutionary War. It was Great Britain that won the war. To the contrary, as with any anti-American revolutionary deconstructionist Larochian cult revisionism of Matthew Ert. Matthew Ert said the same shit on that too. The Revolutionary War wasn't won. Britain lost it because of A, B, or C. In Dr. Martin's case, he's saying they lost it because It was just lost by England because of their finances were stretched too thin. That's what he says. Apparently, as with any good revolutionary, postmodern, progressive, collectivist agent of change, they share another commonality in never missing an opportunity to flat out shit on America, our founders, and our founding principles. And even more, even deeper than that, they're shitting on, convoluting, and confusing and misconstruing the people our founders drew inspiration from in deciphering our founding principles. So it's a multi-layered assault on America. A multi-layered, controlled deconstruction. That's what deconstructionism is. That's what postmodernism is. Revolutionary postmodernism. I'm going to expunge this from the face of the earth, and there won't be anything left in history that validates what our founding principles actually were from the perspective of our founding principles. From the liberty perspective, America will not exist from a liberty perspective. Liberty will not exist from a liberty perspective. Our founding republic will not exist from a liberty perspective or an American perspective. Wow. America will be just redefined. So it'll be from an American perspective, but maybe a nationalist, populist America perspective, or a socialist America perspective, or an anarchist America perspective. If the new Thought Freedom Project or whatever it was with that guy Jason Bassler, whatever his name is, self-proclaimed anarchist. Shannon Joy's going to have him on her show, I guess she said. That's what she said during. And David Martin goes on her show, and she says that on her show. She's going to bring this guy on. An anarchist. Self-proclaimed anarchist. But that's the version of history, of American history, and a version of America that's going to be left when they're done. And this is why I have this show. If there's anybody who gives a shit about this measured and controlled deconstruction of America and it being expunged from the face of the earth for all time, past and present, and future. I'm just trying to put this out there for your consideration. You know, at 4135, Dr. David Martin, in hostile contrast to our actual history of American rugged individualism, Dr. Martin depicts postmodern or post-revolutionary, post-monarchy, post-God Americans realizing they needed, quote, somebody else to take care of them once we fought our revolution, once Britain lost the Revolutionary War. We didn't win, remember? We found ourselves needing somebody else to take care of us. But when we turned to our government, because the capitalists and the individualists won, they weren't there to help us. Shit you not. Who came and then turned to our new government? They turned to our new government without that didn't have the resources, influence, or power to help or provide any of the things that people now needed because they couldn't get it from the king anymore, right? Because individualists, capitalists, traders, and privatized banks now had control of everything, and they took it from the king. At 4210, the great experiment that Jefferson framed as amazing opportunity for the humanist ideal. This is a quote. The great experiment from Dr. Martin. The great experiment that Jefferson framed as amazing opportunity for the humanist ideal to manifest in the earth as humans' crowning achievement was hijacked by foreign banks. That's what he says it there. At 4700, Dr. Martin references how the Protestant religion led into the insidious innovation that was also part of the American tradition of life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. He referred to the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as an insidious innovation. 4700. You probably don't believe me.
Healthcare should be simple, not a constant battle with red tape, restrictions, and shortages, right? You shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get the medications you need. That's why you have to
Sorry about these.
Is it possible that 1776, that Declaration of Independence, that freedom from tyranny, freedom from monarchies, freedom from taxation, freedom from troops that come in and actually occupy your homes, is that freedom actually emerging exactly at the same time that a new form of indenture is being born? In the pursuit of happiness, of life, in the pursuit of happiness. That wonderful Protestant echo of the "you're going to die and there's a better beyond" led us into a very insidious innovation that was also part of the American tradition. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is actually what we keep telling ourselves. Life, insidious innovation that was also part of the American tradition. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the American. Led us into a very liberty in the pursuit of happiness is actually what we keep telling ourselves, but what we have is the Trail of Tears. What was that? That was the massacre of First Nations. We have the importation of laborers to go into the mines and into the sweatshops and into the giant industrial behemoths and the canals that had to be dug and the steel mills that had to be built. And we had this callous neglect for humanity. And so all of a sudden the disparity that exists between life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and gosh, there aren't a lot of happinesses and there's not much living, and the economic driver is actually the fear of death. So underpinning all of our storyline is a growth of an industry that says that we, the people, are about the fear of death every bit as much, if not more, than we are about the opportunity of life. Those stories are part of the American fabric that leads us to a place where we're willing to say that there is an economic motivation that is more important than living. And it is the reason why we don't have a problem in the 1860s when the economic interests of the South.
He's talking about life insurance there, but I shit you not, man. It's shitting all over America's founding principles, shitting all over the whole concept of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and it's not any of the things that he said it was. That life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, I don't know. But anyways, yeah. The insidious innovation that was also part of the American tradition, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that he goes on to critique as the economic model based on debt. The economic model based on death, manifesting the truth of the American story, which was fueled around the price of life being less than the price of economic progress. Okay. And that's only in the first half of that video. Okay. If you watch this video, and I recommend that you do, just hold on to your convictions. Again, hold on to your convictions. If you have any left, if you even have any convictions left at this point, right? As he continues with mesmerizing, inspirational music, motivational music in the background. You hear that music just playing in the background. It's like, I don't know. To once again not only shit on America, but purposefully and intentionally convolute America's founders and founding principles, specifically for another whole hour before concluding with the shameless advocacy of his own brand of woke, DEI, and ESG instilled version of a godless humanist here and now, and happiness, a life pursuit in the here and now. It's all part of humanism. It's all in the Humanist Manifesto. It's godless because we're not going to go for the mythology of an afterlife, mythology of a soul, being breathed into us. Also goes back to Rousseau, goes back to Hobbes, and most all collectivist doctrine. if not all, collectivist doctrine. So, Martin concludes with what I say shameless, in my observation, advocacy of his own brand of a woke, DEI, ESG instilled version of a godless or humanist. Marx actually said that where humanism is communism with the annulment of God, communism is humanism with the annulment of property. Okay? So we're all talking the same collectivism here. Yeah. Life, that humanist is that we need to pursue that everything's not about the hereafter, it's about the here and now, happiness now. And that was one of the reasons why Obama used to say that you can't have a individual salvation without a collectivist salvation, because in the here and now we're going to need redistributive wealth, and you're not going to have any. There's no such thing as a collective salvation until there's the redistribution of everybody. There's an equity, a full out equity of everything, and the forced confiscation of forced redistributive justice, human rights, okay, sustainable development, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, all based on the redistributive justice of human rights. The world's socialism of human rights, all same shit. Yeah, the ESG instilled version of a godless humanist pursuit of happiness in the context of a world socialist, we the people collective. Yes, he ends on that. It can't be it can't be about the individual. The whole we the people is too individualist. We need a we the people collective of the world. Not just America, but the world. No, remember this, Our Evolution by Dr. Martin, because it was the first, it wasn't the first time it's been invoked. More on that below, this whole Our Evolution thing. Just remember that. As you may very well realize by now, this ain't no harmless little frickin' soliloquy that's coming from Dr. David Martin. It's not harmless. It's not without consequence. It might be scripted, but it's very real, and with real consequences for America, our liberty, and our republic. And this is the point that I'm trying to get out there. It's not benign. It's malevolent. It's malignant. The collectivism and the populism of it is kind of it's scary from a liberty perspective. It's popular, but it's not the first time in history, as we'll see. It's not. Furthermore, Dr. Martin's skewing of Adam Smith is wholly consistent here with Noam Chomsky's and the whole of progressive collective academia, really hostile and intentionally convoluting interpretation of John Locke. Like I was saying, it's not just Adam Smith. This is just a example of just a couple guys, few people shitting on Adam Smith throughout the whole of collectivism, throughout the whole of Marxism. But Adam Smith isn't the only one. John Locke is another one too that they love to shit on. Noam Chomsky, really. Our founders took much inspiration from deciphering our founding principles. So regarding Chomsky's, referencing John Locke in the following quote, okay? He did this article back in, I don't know when the hell it was, a while ago, 1989. He did this speech, but in that speech he wrote he says, by about 1660, John Locke wrote that the day laborers and tradesmen, spinsters and dairymen must be told what to believe. The greatest part cannot know, therefore they must believe. He never wrote that. He never wrote that. At least that I can find. And I looked. But the crazy thing is John Locke never actually said what Chomsky is saying that he said there. At least that I can find. But there's still, here's what he did say in more of the context that he said it in, as he wrote it on pages 145 to 147 of his much detested by progressive left, 1824, Reasonableness of Christianity as delivered in Scriptures. So John Locke is actually referring to the reasonableness of Christian Scripture. The reasonableness of Christian Scripture. Well, Christianity and Christian Scripture is detested by the secular left, by progressive collectivism. It's detested. And so when Noam Chomsky critiques Locke's reasonableness of Christianity, okay, he's pointing out, he's shitting on Locke is what he's doing. For a fair assessment that you're going to find in academia on Locke, Smith, and the collectivist arguments against them, I got this article here. Is this going? I think it's going to go. Hey, baby. Hey, kid. Mini P's up. I don't know. I might have to take her down. She probably had enough of this shit here. Let me see what we got going. Is it coming in or what? Give it about 2 more seconds here. See what happens. This is the article. Property rights in the history of economic thought, from John Locke to John Stuart Mill, the utilitarian guy that they were fawning over at the National Conservative Conference, right? The collectivist. Yeah. I did a show on that too. I think the on the National Conservative Conference. But anyways, I got this right here. Oh, wait a minute. I think I already got this up. There it is. I've already got this up here. So basically, this is John Locke. What John Locke actually says in here, and what he's pointing out is that in the context of learning things through pure reason versus humanity and people acquiring knowledge through God, through Scripture, and revelation through Scripture and through, acts of God. Okay. And basically is what he's saying in here. This is the context that he's speaking to. He's not talking about people need to be told to do by other people in order to know anything. And Chomsky is basically shitting on the whole concept of Christian Scripture when he's saying that. So the greatest part of mankind, I won't even go back that far. Wherever they stick, the teachers are always put upon proof. Meaning, you want proof of everything that they're teaching, and must clear the doubt by a thread of coherent deductions from the first principle, how long or how intricate soever they be. As you may soon hope that all the day laborers and tradesmen and spinsters and dairymaids, perfect mathematicians as to be, and dairymaids, perfect mathematicians, as to have them perfect in ethics this way, through just reason. Hearing plain commands is the sure and only course to bring them to obedience and practice, meaning from God, not from other people. The greatest part cannot know, and therefore they must believe. The greatest part cannot know, therefore they must believe. And I ask whether one coming from heaven in the power of God, in the full and clear evidence and demonstration of miracles, given plain and direct rules of morality and obedience, be not likelier to enlighten the bulk of mankind and to set them right in their duties and bring them to do them than by reasoning with them from general notions and principles of human reason. That's what John Locke was talking about. That's what John Locke was talking about. And I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to split this into 2 shows. Minnie P's had it. She's out of here, man. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up for another show, and we're going to get into some other aspects of it. But David Martin is a popular guy. A lot of these doctors and lawyers in the medical freedom movement are popular people. It doesn't make them it doesn't make them less of a threat if they're espousing revolutionary collectivist tenets of revolutionary collectivism, if they're espousing tenets of the collectivist revolution that's targeted our founding principles, that's targeted our founding republic, and targeted our individual rights and liberty for destruction. It doesn't make them less of a threat to our republic, and it makes them more of a threat to our republic. And I'm going to continue on this. And like I said, this is just for your consideration. I know there's a lot of people out there that are in love with this guy. If you're a Marxist, you've got reason to be in love with this guy. But if you're a patriot, or call yourself or refer to yourself as a patriot or a defender of our republic, a defender of our Constitution, a defender of our natural individual rights and liberty, our founding principles, then you might want to take what I'm going over here into consideration. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But we need to take into consideration and hear not just what these people are saying, but what they mean by what they're saying in the context of the history of what they're saying. I mean, he's not making it up as he's going along here. He's not just willy-nilly throwing shit out there, this guy. He's a linguist, remember? And I've got more to dig into on this. Again, thanks for stopping by The Liberty Perspective. I hope you're getting something out of this show. I put a lot of work into putting this together for your consideration. And I look forward to getting the rest of this out to you in the next episode on the revolutionary collectivism of Dr. David Martin. You know, if that's what it is. And we'll get into that the next show. Thanks again. I'm Joe Marshall. See you the next time.